Welcome, Scorpio, to your high voltage Mars square Pluto deep dive video for the ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. From the 22nd of May through to the 30th, your two ruling planets forge a really intense right angle. This is one of astrology's most powerful, challenging, and turbulent aspects. It reaches a climax on the 26th. On the screen is the event chart from a purely Scorpio viewpoint. I'm going to unpack this for you, and by the end of the video, I hope it gives you a clearer understanding of how to navigate this in terms of your energy, work, relationships, and finances. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundel. A very warm welcome. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please do so now to help it to continue to thrive. Let's just think about the themes of Mars through the sign of Aries. Very much about action, initiation, thrust, willpower. Can be to do with our identity, our ego, but also it can be about protectiveness. It's where it needs to defend, and in the most extreme situations, fight. And that's where its reputation as a warrior comes in. But Mars, of course, also rules your sign, much more subterranean, much less obvious in terms of how it uses its power, but very, very resonant. So Mars in Scorpio is incredibly intense. It can conjure up at times complex emotions around desire, instant gratification, ownership, jealousy, but also it can be very positive, along with your other ruler, Pluto, in being very persistent in your effort and then evolving at an appropriate time, often quite suddenly. Pluto, your modern ruler, very much about transformation, can be about complex energies, sometimes hidden out of sight. It is, after all, the planet of the underworld. So it can be about obsession and very much about the transformation in our lives. So it can be dealing with themes like death and rebirth too. But what about their current homes? So on the screen, you can see that Mars is in the sign of Taurus, which is an Earth sign. It's ruled by Venus. So here it has a sensual dimension, and Mars's appreciation of desire is maxed up. But Taurus also appreciates stability. It's a slower to anger position for Mars to be in because it wants to embrace continuity, as that's what Taurus gets. But also it helps us to think about things like our finances, our possessions, our material needs. And that's not a bad thing. That's part of the journey. But for you, Mars is actually in the seventh house, which can be where we have a contact with someone, can be where we set our boundary. It can be where we need to compete. But of course, it can be about relationships. And Mars in the seventh house can be much more conscious of pursuing what it wants in a more proactive way. Pluto, however, over the last few years for you, full time, has been since November 2024 in the sign of Aquarius, which is an air sign, also fixed like Taurus, but air energy is about communication. Pluto is the planet of the collective, but in the sign of Aquarius, it's where we're all connected. It is the sign of community. But because it can be a bit detached, Aquarius, and also because its modern ruler, Uranus, is very much about innovation, we could argue that Pluto here is a lot to do with the big shifts that are going on in terms of technology, robotics, automation, and artificial intelligence. But over that last few years for you, Scorpio, I feel that Pluto has been asking some big questions about your emotional heritage that could go right back into the roots of your very beginning on this earth. It may be to do with your early life. It could be to do with people who deceased you that you are related to. So if you have been interested in genealogy over the last couple of years, not a surprise at all. But Pluto, of course, can be about rejuvenation. And the fourth house can be about homes or where we live, properties. So if you have been repurposing your home, altering it in some ways, decoratively, practically, moving altogether, going somewhere bigger, somewhere quieter, uh, downsizing after kids have flown the nest. All of that could be going on. But one of the big things is you may have been actually detaching, very Aquarius, from people who used to be in your life emotionally and who no longer serve your greater purpose. But the square between Mars and Pluto is the ultimate power clash of the zodiac. It's a battle of wills. Mars in that need for attention as far as relationships, Pluto in need of a change or a deep understanding of the emotional dimension. So if you're in a relationship where you've got more sensitive energies developing, and a partner's not really tuning into that, that could create an enormous amount of resentment, which could peak over this last 10 days of May. But then again, you may be attracted to someone, but their physical situation doesn't make it easy for you to connect. So it may be because they live away from you, uh, have children who don't quite fit your circumstances, or vice versa. But then again, it could be that at work you are needing to take on challenges because the seventh house is open enemies, and it's quite tiring, it's exhausting, and maybe that is where the fourth house energy shows up too. But if we widen the lens on this event, we need to look at the other players. And of course, as always, knowing where the two luminaries are is important. So the sun is in the chatty Gemini, along with the revolutionary energies of Uranus and the planet which rules the sign of communication, Mercury. But the moon is in the sign of Libra, which is very much about wanting balance and equilibrium. But intriguingly, in the 12th house of your chart, which could throw up some anxieties. Now, the moon, the position of Pluto, and the sun are all connected in pretty well a ground air trine, which undoubtedly can be very positive. Because they're air signs, that's about communication as much as what we think about. So you could be thinking very deeply about your situation, even talking about it. The sun in the eighth house, strangely, has an echo of Scorpio energy. So you could be talking about deep feelings, but that can be very constructive if you've got an outlet. If there's some kind of highly charged situation, say you share a house. Some people buy properties together these days because of economic circumstances, when maybe their romantic relationship isn't quite as aligned as it could be. Totally understandable, but that could create politics, differences of opinion. If you're involved in something like that, do try to output your frustration in a constructive discussion with someone who's a good listener, but also understands your circumstances pretty well. But I would say, in terms of your energy, Saturn, the planet of structure, but can be about limitation, is in the sixth house of physical energy and in an opposition with that moon in the 12th house, which can be much more psychological. So if you are involved in some kind of standoff at the moment and one person wants something different and it is a real arm wrestle, I think it could be very draining, even if on the face of it, you're marshalling your energies as best you can. But what about the wins on this event? Well, I think that Venus, the planet of relating and money, is in a fabulous link with Mars. So if you're collaborating with someone you get on well with, your values are well aligned to, maybe there's even a lot of attraction, that could be very, very helpful. I should also stress that Mars square Pluto can give us such a desire to win through over problems and struggles, and that can be an innate part of Scorpio personality. You know, you can overcome challenges time after time, reinvent yourself, very Plutonian, and there may be an opportunity to do that through this situation. However, Saturn, that planet of limitation, is in a square with Venus. So if this is a financial issue you're discussing or a difference of opinion, it could not only feel very highly charged and turbulent, it could feel really quite cold, particularly if you're wanting to speak your truth. Someone may scrutinize that and dismiss it in quite a ruthless way. We also have a T-square between the Sun and the nodal axis. So if you are thinking about a romantic relationship, the North Node, the true North Node in Pisces to the end of July is really suggesting that the need to flex, very mutable energy of Pisces, is important. You need to have your friendships and your old patterns. But if you're really being asked to go all in the situation before you really feel ready, and there does feel to be some leverage going on, which is very classic of this particular aspect, that is something you can resist as well. I'm going to summarize the four areas for you, Scorpio, of energy, work, relationships, and finances next. But just to say, I've slashed the price of my personal horoscope reports, now 3 for the price of 1. Used to be 30% off 2. So I've really slashed the price because I realized that, people are feeling the pinch. And the one you pay for is your life roadmap report, which helps us to understand the patterns that play out in our life so far, get a more intimate understanding of them, but use the energy and knowledge we have in a better way future forwards. Free, your 12 months transit forecast and your draconic soul karmic analysis. If in your natal chart your North Node isn't late in Pisces or early in Aries, your draconic chart can look very different to your natal chart. It helps us to understand astrology in a different way, ourselves, and also life. Very fascinating indeed. Please see below for more. If you've yet to watch your Mars 6-week in Taurus video forecast, please see that on the screen. If you've yet to watch your Gemini season forecast, 1 month forecast, on the screen. If you'd like to work with me one-to-one, it'd be an absolute pleasure. Please see the testimonials below. And if you've yet to take advantage of my free daily written horoscope, fired to your device each morning for your early day celestial pit stop, please see that below too. This is going to be a 10-day period when you will need to really be in touch with your core values. But do understand, if you're having a grapple, a disagreement with someone you usually get on well with, do try to widen the lens. Try to keep the dialogue going. Try to understand where they're coming from, but also where you're coming from too. If you're looking for a higher truth in a relationship context, you're going to get a better outcome around about the start of the second week of June. That's encouraging. You could meet someone at the current time with this aspect that really has such an impact on you. It could actually be hard to comprehend, but it may require you to flex from what you're truly familiar with. When it comes to your professional situation, I think that you may need to really be conscious that it's important at the moment to be as effective as possible to provide a return which will create more security. But if you can be open-minded and definitely open to different forms of technology, I think you will be okay. But energy-wise, I think that could be a little bit vulnerable. In terms of your romantic situation, if you're not in a heavy relationship at the moment, but you encounter someone over the next 10 days you really like, don't let the Pluto Mars square put you off, because that Mars sextile Venus is absolutely delicious. But just be aware with Saturn squaring Venus of being as realistic as possible about what the other person can offer you. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to seeing you again soon.